It's my boy Floyd. Intelligent, you're heaven sent, incredible. Girl, you got my back with focus. I like you, get me on track. Hey, D.
What's going on? Let me put a shirt on. I'm tripping.
Huh?
So let me put a shirt on. I'm tripping.
Yeah, put a shirt on.
Whatever. I'll be right back, fool.
I was playing my intro song anyway. We got a few minutes, you guys, so bear with us. While Darian puts a t-shirt on, we'll give us a few minutes and we're going to get started. But I wanted to support my boy Floyd and play his song in my intro. It's called Beautifully Feminine by Floyd Boykin Jr., one of my very dear friends. And I see you standing there proudly, ready to make peace and love, or if you have to. You're beautiful, intelligent, you're heaven sent. All right. We're going to wait for Darian to get settled.
He ain't got no sense at all.
We're going to wait for Darian to get settled so we can start this thing. So I came in a few minutes early because I wanted to play the intro and support my boy Floyd and play his song. Again, that was Floyd Boykin Jr. That is called Beautifully Feminine. First, I want to start off by thanking everybody for their support. Thanks for everybody for coming in, tuning in. For those who share this out with your followers, thank you. Thank you for those who will come back and watch the replay. I really appreciate the support. And I want to especially thank Darian for almost immediately agreeing to come on and talk about this, because forgiveness is a big deal.
It is indeed.
We talk about I forgive somebody. We say those words, but I don't think people really go through that process of actually forgiving people. It just seems easier to say rather than actually do and go through the process of actually forgiveness. So let me first start off. I had to make some notes because I have a lot of different things I want to talk about and I don't want to lose track of anything. So for those who are starting to come in, because again, I started a few minutes early. I wanted to play Floyd's music. I wanted to give Darian a moment to get settled and everything. So I did start just a few moments early. Hey, Aretha, and I did want to make sure I had everything connected and going right before I started. So that's why I started a few minutes early. So it's 7:15. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, thanks everybody for coming in. Thanks everybody for their support, for sharing, for messages that I got from people that were really excited about what I was doing as well. So first, good evening all, and welcome to my very first podcast, Healing Poetic Podcast, which is based off of my series of books, the Healing Poetic Expression series. And I decided that this would be important to do because I have so many different things that I wrote about in my books. And healing was such a big deal. Talking about the healing process, going through the healing process, sharing a lot of that process. I've shared a lot of my business on Facebook, through social media outlets, and just the process that I've gone through over the years in healing. And my healing was comprised of a lot of different things I've experienced in life. Love, loss in both ways, loss of relationships, loss of people in my life that I've loved, that just are no longer here with us. And I wanted to really deal with this whole forgiveness thing because so many of us, again, we talk about and we use that word, oh, I forgive that person. But then you hear them talk about that person and you can see the rage in their face. You can see the tension in their body and all of that. So there's 4 things I definitely want to hit on tonight. So let me tell you what those 4 things are. And we're going to go through those 4 things. And then I'm going to let Darian speak to everybody and say hello to everybody. Some people knew I had a husband. They didn't know I had 2 ex-husbands. So, I'm real. I'm transparent. So one of the things I want to talk about is forgiveness throughout our relationship and our marriage. I want to talk about grudges and unbuilt and built unforgiveness. I want to talk about divorce and the after effect of divorce. And then I want to talk about the process of how Darian and I collectively became friends, how we began that forgiveness process, and it has been truly an experience. So that'll be how we end the conversation. So, hey, everybody, I see my mom just chimed in. I see other people saying
Amen.
hello. Hey, you guys, thanks for joining. So, Darian, I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to people who don't know you. A lot of people that are on do know you, but go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, please.
Hello, everybody. I am Darian. I am Kia's first husband, the original. No, let me quit playing. Um, no, but I was excited to do this because I think that it's important work. I think that the growth and development in the phases that we went through have definitely been a transition that, could definitely benefit and help other people to heal.
Yes, absolutely, Darian. And so, one of the things that I can tell you for a fact that happened in Darian and I's relation, not only our relationship, but in our marriage, is we would get upset with each other, and there would be literally sometimes days we would not talk to each other. Right, Darian?
This is
Like we would
true.
be in the same house,
In the
wouldn't
same
speak to
bed.
each other,
Yeah.
wouldn't say anything. We wouldn't acknowledge each other and sleep in the same bed. Right? So when that was happening, what was happening on the other side was built up resentment.
And
And that
walls.
started to build. What you say, Darian?
I said, and walls went up.
Exactly. So walls were built up that prevented us from even getting to a space of forgiveness, because by the time we got to a place where we were moving on to the next thing, we had already had these built up walls from something else. So the previous argument, walls were already built up. We already had issues. And so thank you, Charla. Hi, thanks for tuning in. We already had walls built up. And so the next argument, that only increased the level of that wall.
Right.
And by the time we got to a space where things were really bad, the wall had basically covered all of me, and that wall had basically covered all of Darian. Would you agree with that, Darian?
I would definitely agree with it.
And over time, we saw it, we knew it, we acknowledged it, we talked about it with one another, and we would say to each other, like, hey, we need to do something about this. And that's what happens a lot of times. People say they acknowledge the fact that there's an issue or there's a problem, but then we don't do anything about it because of
Mm.
what? Pride,
Pride. Pride. And I mean,
right?
one of the craziest things is that we were never on the same page at the same time. I don't know if you remember towards the end when I went out and got I think it was the Love Dare at that point. And,
Mm-hmm.
I was open to doing it and you were closed. And then when you came along, I was like, yo, I'm done with it, which was really the
Yeah.
wrong attitude to take. But, unfortunately, that's what couples ended up doing. And, the most important thing I think that anybody in a relationship or a marriage needs to understand is that what happens in your house needs to stay inside your house unless you are talking to a counselor or someone at your church who deals in relationships. But going to friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
that gets sticky, because when you forgive that other person, a lot of times your friends and your family don't. And not saying that that was the case, because mama kept it pretty neutral. um
Mm-hmm.
but I know that's hard. It's hard for people. And I you know oftentimes what happens is that couples will go and talk to someone else and not talk to each other, and that's a problem.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, Darian. I didn't even realize you were going to bring that up. I thought about that, and I thought about how oftentimes that's what both of us did. Like we would both, you would go talk to your set of friends or whoever, and I would go talk to
Right.
my set of friends or whoever. And what ends up happening when you start taking your business outside to other people is you get advice from people, and 9 times out of 10, it's the people who are not married, who are
Right.
not in the same space as you are in your relationships, in their own relationships. So you
Yeah.
taking advice from the wrong people, and then you take what they say and give it too much weight.
Right.
And at
Right.
that time, I honestly, I know for a fact, for me personally, I was a very wounded, broken person. And I can acknowledge that. And I can acknowledge the fact that I brought a lot of that stuff with me into
Well, I
that
mean,
marriage.
I think we both were. I don't think it was more
Yeah.
one than the other. We both brought our own set, and I think that's one of the biggest problems is people bring a predetermined set of expectations into a relationship that have nothing to do with the new person. They're basing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that off of, what they learned as a child coming up. We both came from, situations where we didn't have both of our birth parents in the home. And so,
Mm-hmm.
neither one of us had seen it done necessarily the right way. And so,
Mm-hmm.
we went based off of what little information we had and those predetermined expectations that we didn't always communicate.
Right. Right. And that's so true because I can openly admit this because through my transparency, I know I'm helping other people and blessing other people. But I can share that through my transparency, one of probably the most toxic things I brought into our marriage was my anger. And I had a lot of anger. I went to anger management twice. I've shared that with a lot of people in a lot of different out on a different in my books. I've shared it on social media sites. I've shared it with friends and family. My anger was out of control, and it really spilled over into my relationships with not just in my marriage, but in my relationships with people. I would just explode, and it really caused me to be physical. It caused me to say things that I didn't mean and couldn't take back. It caused people to really be angry with me because of how I lashed out because of my anger. And once I got to the space of understanding, why am I angry? Where is this coming from? And how do I deal with this anger? I couldn't get to a space where I had that peace. And if you don't have
Yeah.
peace and all there is chaos, then you're going to take that chaos with you everywhere you go. And that's what I did on my side. That's what I can say that I did. I know that there was a lot of anger and a lot of chaos and just a lot of mess that I brought into
Well,
that marriage.
for me, it was um we met not long after I came out of my first marriage, and so for me, because of what I was dealing with as far as the kidney disease, that was based on, I made decisions early in life based on the fact that I didn't think I would be around. And so,
Mm-hmm.
that first situation wasn't even based on, it wasn't based on love, it was just like, yo, I need to experience life. I need to see how things go. And I think, you know, um, with the twist and the turn we went through even before we got married, going through separations and time apart and, all of that, but still clinging on to whatever we had, and then coming full
Mm-hmm.
circle back around, you know, I tell people all the time, there's handbooks for everything in life other than relationships. There is no instruction manual. And so if you don't see it done right,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't even say that there is a specific right way, but
Right.
if you don't
Mm-hmm.
see it done in a way that is positive,
And
I'm sure
successful.
we both witnessed,
Yeah.
you know, arguments of our parents in the home, and you know, separations and single parent, and you know, you were dealing with, you know, the the legal situation when you got back from Phoenix. So you had that weight. You were going to school and, you know, doing all those things. So I think, um, you know, again, it's that we didn't always communicate well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be until we reached the roadblock that we would end up, you know, after days, you know, sometimes saying, hey, this is what happens. And I don't know that we were both very stubborn, both very prideful, very strong-willed
Yeah.
people, and so, you know, there was a power struggle a lot of times, and there really shouldn't have been. You know, we should have sought,
Mm-hmm.
I think, counseling and guidance ahead of time. You know, and
Yeah.
said, you know, and we had great resources at the church. Dr. Brooks was awesome, but we didn't
Mm-hmm.
always do it. You know, we didn't always follow through. You know, there were a lot of times,
Exactly.
and, you know, I felt, you know, looking back, there were a lot of times that you needed certain things emotionally that I wasn't necessarily giving you because of the way that I came up. You know, I knew how to be a
Mm-hmm.
protector and a provider. My emotional
Yeah.
side wasn't always there. You know, I knew how to take
Mm-hmm.
care of a family well and provide, but, you know, the emotional side, I grew up only knowing how to have sex to show emotion because my sister's
Yeah.
dad told me that it was weak to show emotion, you know. And so
Mm-hmm.
there are so many men that grow up in that way who don't know how to show emotion other than physical contact. And, you know, as
True.
men and women, we're built differently. You all need things that we don't necessarily need. And that's why understanding love languages is so important because
Mm-hmm.
you could be showing, you know, I was thinking that, hey, I'm showing her that I love her and Corey by making sure that the refrigerator is stocked and the bills are paid. We got a nice place to stay and we go out and we do things. But it isn't always, you know, if that's not the language that you receive it in, I could do that a million days a year and that wouldn't make you feel loved. I
And by the
believe you
time,
appreciated it.
yeah, and by the time we recognize that and realize that, like by the time we both understood, dang, you know, we really need to understand each other's love language, it was like too late. Just like,
Yeah.
remember, we were watching Fireproof. Like we found
Hmm.
out about Fireproof, and I'll never forget. Like that was, we watched it together, and then you were watching it when I came to you and said, I can't do this anymore. Do you remember that? You were
I do.
watching Fireproof at that time, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. Because by that time, we had built up so much resentment. We had built up so many walls that, and I was watching, have you heard of the relationship guy, Derek Jackson?
I've heard of
He does,
Derek
he
Jackson. I
does
don't know
like a
about his
lot of,
diet. Yeah, I seen the
he does a lot
videos.
of different like YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And he was
I've seen it.
talking, and so he was talking on one of his videos just yesterday. I was watching, and he was talking about how women and men are done at different times.
Hmm.
So a woman, by the time a woman is done, she's already gone through all her emotions. Okay, and then by the time the man realizes that the woman is checked out, she's done, and that is so true because, like you said earlier, men and women talk about things differently. We communicate differently. All of that is so different, and so if you can't really understand your partner and your mate, if you can't understand at the very least their love language, you're loving them differently than what they need from you. And
Right.
so, and one thing I want to talk about is Charla. I think that was her name. She asked a question up here earlier, or she made a statement, and she said, "Do you feel as if there was pressure to get married versus the pressure to heal separately?" And so that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about too. Is both of us entered into a relationship after a lot of pain, in which we should have been by ourselves. And that's what so many people are doing out here. We're going from relationship to relationship, and there is no in between, right? And so you step out of one relationship, you go into the next relationship, and you've not had any time in between to heal, to process the pain, to process your emotions and what happened in that relationship, because you feel like I'm gonna miss out on something if I don't get this. And if what's for you is for you, right?
Right.
So if it was intended and meant for us to be together, we would have been together. So we needed to have that space and that time for healing. And that's why my focus has been healing. That's why I started writing about healing and the importance of it. Because you
Right.
can't have nothing healthy in this world. And I mean, you can't have nothing healthy in this world until you're a healed person. Because being healed makes you see and understand that you're a whole person. And so
Right.
many people think that I need another person
To be
to make
whole.
me whole. You
Yeah.
don't need another person to make you whole. And what I've discovered since I started the healing process, the healing journey, is I'm whole by myself. Another person is added to me, and this means you are a bonus. But by myself, I'm whole alone. I
Right.
don't need anybody to make me complete. I even feel like that about friends and companionship. I used to have to be around people, and you know that about me. I
Yeah.
am still a social butterfly. I still enjoy people, but I enjoy myself. And I'm that's who I am. And no other person can make you complete. No other person can make you whole. And we don't understand that until we
Right.
are healed as a people. And
Oh
so
yeah.
we talked about the first and the second thing kind of simultaneously. And the first thing was the forgiveness throughout our marriage and throughout our, and then we've talked about the grudges. And then I want to talk about the divorce and the after effect, and how the forgiveness process had to start once we divorced, because
Yeah.
because it was a little tumultuous there, right? We had
Now
some
let's
mixed.
be real. It was toxic. It was
It was
toxic at
toxic
that
as
point.
hell. Okay, it was toxic as hell. We're gonna go and be real.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep it transparent, right? I couldn't stand your ass. And you couldn't stand me. Right?
Facts.
We couldn't stand
Facts.
each other. So
Yeah.
we were doing things, I think, out of the hurt and
Yeah.
out of the anger and out
Well,
of
one
the
of the things
unforgiveness.
that, I look back at is, you know, even after um we weren't in the same household anymore, we still kept a certain kind of connection. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that at that point I had cut my emotional side completely off. And I did not realize that um, in that continued connection, I was hurting you at that point, because
Mm-hmm.
emotionally you were still there. And I thought it just, as most people say, it was what it was. And although I was still connected, I would not allow myself to emotionally connect, because I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, honestly, I was angry, because I'm like, yo, you picked this damn house out, not me, and I felt like, yo, I wouldn't have made certain decisions, if it had just been me, and that
Yeah.
was, I did have resentment about that, because I'm like, yo, I made decisions as a provider, as a married man, as someone who was taking care of his family. And, you know, I'm just like, so there was some resentment there, and I remember the last time that I saw you like that, there was a physical confrontation, and it
Mm-hmm.
just turned
Yeah.
into, and I didn't realize where that was coming from. But then now, looking back, I'm like, I was kind of being an asshole about it,
Yeah.
because, and after we talked about it, you know, and you were upfront about how you were feeling, I didn't look at it that way. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't purposely trying to be an asshole. I cut that off, because, you don't just go from being with somebody as long as we were together and you immediately stop caring.
And you know, like when you talked about, I want to go back to the part where you said our last kind of interaction became physical. And that goes back to what I said earlier on, where that was always my response when I got angry. Like that was what I thought. You get angry, I'm gonna put my hands on you. I'm gonna throw something at you. Like that's how I dealt with it. I didn't have a mature way to handle my anger, which only made it that much worse. It only intensified our issues. Let's see. Rita, I think I
7
was
years.
20. No, she asked how old we
Now the
were when we
follow-up
got married.
question says, how long were you together?
Oh, um, but we were in our 20s when we got married.
Yeah.
And we were together. We were married for a
5. We were
total of
together.
5 years.
We were together 2 years
Um,
before that.
and we dated for 2 years prior to us getting married. So a total of 7 years together. And it was, I mean, it truly was a roller coaster. I can't even begin to tell people that how much of a roller coaster it was. Like I'm what, a year and a half, 2 years older than you. So we were in our 20s. I had my son. Darian didn't have any children at all, and that was another issue that we had that caused a lot of issues between us. Is we parented differently, and I had Corey. He didn't have any children, but he came right in, being dad to Corey. So, I've always told people and commended Darian on the fact that he came right in and had no problem. Like he said earlier, he is a provider. That's who he is. But he can be disconnected. So he's like in his mind, hey, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to take care of these bills. I'm going to take her home. Everything else, I needed to flow right. Like almost like sergeant type. You would think he was in the military sometimes. So, but emotionally,
That's
he can
not
get
altogether
disconnected.
true. I'll give you some of that, but I ain't gonna give you all of that. Now, there were some times the thing was, when we got married, I understood that his dad was very slimly present. He was omnipresent. And so, and that's no disrespect, but Corey, he was my son. I don't do
Yeah.
steps. I don't do that. If you're my family, you're my family. And so, I bought his clothes. I cut his hair. We did stuff
Mm-hmm.
together as a family. We did stuff together separately, but we did have. And Kia, I'm gonna put it out there. You had the mama syndrome where you was very overprotective of him,
Yeah.
and I just felt that there were certain things that he got away with, like my ribs all the damn time when we would come home from, I can't remember, Tony Roma's, and the homecoming incident where we came home and it was smoke billowing out the house and black ass grease on the stove and everything else, and he got the window wide open and at the football game. And so we did have, we had a lot of disagreements about that, because I feel like when he realized that we didn't agree, in some ways he
Mm-hmm.
played on it.
He used
He
that.
played on it.
Yeah,
Yes.
he used
And
that
it
to play
caused,
against us. Yeah.
a lot of disagreements. Now I go to bat for him. Like I would go up to the school and I used to tell him,
Mm-hmm.
as a teacher, you can't have me looking like no damn fool, and this is what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't I treated him like I would have treated my own son, because in my mind that's
Mm-hmm.
what he was. And
Yeah.
that was, and even after the day that you left, I told him, hey, if you want to have a relationship with me, we can still do that. I'm not going to be no ATM. You got to call me for more than money and clothes and shoes. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was my thing. And the first couple of times he called, I ran and, what we need, but it wasn't, there was a disconnect there. And so
Yeah.
I didn't take it personally. I still keep a relationship with B. He's gonna always be my nephew. I tell people that it ain't no different. He's my nephew the same way that TJ is. I love him to death.
Yeah.
you know and so, and if Corey wanted a relationship, we could have one. But you know, it is what it is. He's a grown man now. I'm glad to hear that he's doing well, you know, but there were times, and he was a smart individual. He knew how to play both sides to the middle,
Hmm.
you
He
know.
did. I
So,
mean,
you know,
Corey definitely he knew how to play us against each other, but Corey knew how to do that with everybody in the family. And most kids do. Like most kids will do that if you allow it.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
for a very long time, I was mama bear. You know, like you said, I was very protective and I held on tight. And you know, and there's repercussions behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like there is some things that come out of that. And I
yeah.
found out later, you know, and thank God he has become independent and
Immature.
he's
Yeah,
doing, yeah, and very mature and doing well. But yeah, that could have, you know, definitely caused even more problems than it did. But again, you know, I do appreciate the fact that, you know, you completely stepped in that role and was a father to him the entire time and continue to um even afterwards, you know, whether or not he reached
yeah.
out or not, just the fact that you would check in or if I told you
Oh,
there was a
but
need.
you know,
um
I would tell any woman who has children, if that man is not willing to accept your child, he's not the one. You know, because I grew
mhm.
up in a single parent, you know, household, and I tried to do for him what Ernie did for me. You know, because he's
Right.
still dad, even though him and my mom ain't been married for 20 years. You know, that's what real
Hmm.
men do. You know, I had
And
somebody
I
who
was
stepped in the gap for me.
that was my father-in-law and he was a good man. So yeah,
Yeah.
I loved Ernie and I miss Ernie. He was a good man. But I want to that was good, Darian. That was good. I want us to talk about now how the process, so we talked about, you know, the divorce and the after effect a little bit, and I want to talk about how the process like really began, like what we did um to start forgiving each other and build the friendship that we now have. Because I tell people, like, we have a great friendship. Like, if you were to call me and say, hey, such and such is popping off and this going on, I got you. Like,
Right.
that's how
Right.
close we are. And let me
Yeah.
let
I
me
mean, I
preface
think,
this before you say something, Darian. Let me say this: people are so toxic and enjoy being toxic and enjoy being negative, and sometimes they don't realize that they are. That I can tell people that me and Darian are closer friends, or I'll say me and my ex-husband are really good friends. You know, and people are like, why? Why would you do that? That really shows the level of like toxicity that we sometimes carry and the negativity that we carry, which really solidifies my point on how important healing is. Because if you were a
yeah.
healed person and you thought healing was important and you thought forgiveness was important, you wouldn't make comments like that. And some people are playing and joking around, but I just honestly feel like in order for me to be whole and healed and um have the doors open so that I can receive my abundance of blessings, I need to forgive. I need to be healed. I need to feel whole as a person. And so I don't hold any animosity towards anybody. I wanted us to talk
You
about
know,
our healing process and our forgiveness process because it's important. Some people saw
right.
us in our nastiness.
Oh yeah. But I think, you know, honestly, forgiveness is a process. You know, it's not overnight.
Mhm.
And, you know, when you talk about people and the toxicity, hurt people. And
Yep.
so, you know, we all still carry, you know, hurts, and, you know, we got to a level that was explosive. You know, it was almost like a, you know, it wasn't pretty at all. You know, I look back on it and I'm
Right.
like, that wasn't nothing but God that we were able to get to this point, you know, because
Mhm.
one of the things that I tell people is, you don't know how much a person has your back until they have your back. And, you know, I tell people to this day, one of the things that opened my eyes and, you know, God was dealing with me is when I found out I was sick and you slept in that hospital chair for 7 straight days and didn't leave. Like that was, you know, people can say they're gonna be there for you, but you know the story behind that, and you know who told me no when I needed what I needed at that point, and you know I
Mhm.
didn't know where my blessing was coming from at all, and so you know, that really, really, really opened my eyes. And, when I sat back and thought about that, like, that's not something everybody is going to be so quick to do, and so even despite the things that happened, um, I think that was one of the things that I tell people, like, whatever woman, like, yo, December 8th, she always gonna get that call. I don't care if you're sitting here or not, we gonna talk that day, because, you giving me a kidney saved my life, and so despite all the other stuff, that'll always hold true. And so, you know, I went through times where I was calling you every mother trucker in the book, and I'm sure you did too, because, and I told you, I think one of the craziest parts for me was I still had to walk through the halls that we shared for 7 years. You know what I'm saying? I
Mm-hmm.
still had to be in that space because it just was what it was. And so I carried a lot of negativity for a long time, and it was just like, why? I can't move forward
Yeah.
if I'm still holding negativity. And that's one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that people have to understand. In order to move and to move forward, you got to let that go,
Yeah.
and there's so many people out here who aren't able to do that. One of the things is that, you know, we still held connections to each other's family. Like, you were still rapping with Wit. I was still,
Mm-hmm.
seeing Trish and Brian, and I would see Granny, and I would see, Mama, and it's still all love to this day, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of those things where you look at it and be like, it's stupid, because me and Wit,
Yeah.
you know, we would get into it, and she like, I'm still gonna talk to Kia, and I'm just like, okay, it is what it is, and she
Yeah.
was like, okay, I don't care who you talking to, that's still my sister, and I get it,
Yeah.
because now that's the same point I'm at with Tori. Tori's always gonna be my brother, whether there was a
Right.
TJ or not, but there is a TJ, and so that I pray, you know, for them, I mean, and I think they have a pretty decent relationship, and they do well, but there's also a child involved. We didn't have a child involved. And
Yeah.
so not a birth child, not anybody who was small, and we had to do the back and forth, and it's my turn and it's your turn. And
Mm-hmm.
so, now I look at, you walking in your purpose, and I'm proud of you. I see you, doing your writing and doing all those things that neither one of us did reach our goal until we separated,
Yeah.
because for me, I had to go back to school to support the bills
Cool.
that I thought, and so, um, but even that, is just like, is growth. And I think when people can say, at the end of the day, happiness is going to come from in here, and don't nobody else dictate that. Nobody else is in
Right.
control of that, and still say, hey, this is good in this other person, despite whatever we went through, and
Mm-hmm.
realize that at one point, I did love this person, and what was the reason behind that? Obviously, they were good for something, so
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that. That's a great point because oftentimes what happens when you separate from somebody, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, a marriage, whatever, we speak the negative things about them, but we accepted those negative things when we were their friend or their
right,
husband or
lady,
wife
yeah,
or their girlfriend or boyfriend. Now we want to bring it up and talk negatively and speak negatively about that person. And I think most people do that. But what I found was that it was unhealthy. And what you ultimately found was that it was unhealthy and it wasn't leading us to a space of healing.
right,
It wasn't leading us to a space of peace. And it wasn't bringing any positivity to the situation. And so I tell people oftentimes, I want to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. So I tell people often, my journey began after me stumbling, me making mistakes, me falling on my face, me being hurt, and me hurting people. So I really think that there was so much purpose in that. And it wasn't necessarily for us to hurt each other or harm each other. It wasn't, the purpose wasn't in it for us to just talk about the divorce. The purpose in it is what we are dealing with right now, which is
Right.
somebody is going to watch this video, no matter who it is. Somebody's going to watch this video and they're going to say, you know what? I need to let that go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still harboring on some feelings that don't even matter.
Yeah.
I need to move on. I need to release that person, and I need to be able to release myself from the hurt and the pain and whatever I felt from that, so that I can move forward and I can have peace in my life and be happy. Because you don't have to stay in that space of unforgiveness. You don't have to stay in that space of holding grudges. It's so unhealthy. And
It is.
it doesn't give you anything. You go to bed at night and you stressed and you hurting, and you take that to the next person and the next person. And you find yourself just continuing on that cycle of hurt. Like you
Yeah.
said earlier, hurt people hurt people. And it's so true. We oftentimes take that same level of pain and take it somewhere else, and we put it on somebody else. And there's nothing that's healthy about that whatsoever. And
Well,
so
another point to that is, I remember when we were in counseling and Dr. Brooks told us that there were consequences for divorce. God hates
mhm,
divorce. And, I tell people all the time, it ain't what you think it is. It
mhm,
ain't, don't be so quick to do it. Like, literally take those vows seriously, and oftentimes, after we talked, once we had healed, it was like, you know what? We could have fixed that. It wasn't
yeah,
as serious as we made it out to be. And,
mhm,
there, one day you will have to answer to God for that, because it's supposed to be for a lifetime. The only out in marriage, as I understand it, is marital unfaithfulness, and that wasn't the case. So, I
mhm,
tell people all the time, fix it. It can be fixed. You
yeah,
just got to work at it. And as hard as we work at everything else, you have to work that much harder at your marriage. And there, it ain't saying you're going to die after you get divorced, but there are consequences, emotional consequences and spiritual consequences
mhm,
to that. And you will feel it. It's not an easy thing. People always think that the grass is greener on the other side. And the thing is, whatever issues you were dealing with are internal and they go with you.
yeah,
So if you don't fix it,
mhm.
you repeat that same cycle with whoever you deal with.
Exactly, exactly. And so I'm glad you said that, Darren. It's so true. We take that we take those issues with us to the next person, and so we don't understand that the consequence can be so far greater than what we realize at the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I want to get ready to wrap up, and I want to thank everybody for the I didn't get to answer and respond to everybody because we were really involved in the conversation, but I want to let you all know, thank you for supporting. Thank you for coming on now, because this is part of my series, the Healing Poetic Expression series. There are people on here who are watching who I have never seen before, and I'm glad that you're here, but you don't probably know who I am or what I have or what I've done. And so I want to talk about that real briefly and then let you guys go, because I wanted this to last for 45 minutes. We're right at the cusp of that 45 minutes. So I just want to hit on some things and how you can support what I'm doing. My goal is to have a podcast every week, every Thursday at 7:15 for 45 minutes. I've designated a theme each month, and the month of July is forgiveness. Darian and I kicked it off for the first Thursday in the month, and the very first podcast. And so I wanted to really give people a insight to somebody, to a couple who is being an ex-couple who's being transparent and honest and real about the process and the process of forgiveness, the process of our own individual healing journey, and the process of our forgiveness, and how we are such good friends now, authentically real. Ain't no fake stuff. It's real. You know what I'm saying? And that's because we did the work. We did the work. So let me go through this really, really quickly. My first book was published in May of 2016. It's called My Words Healed My Soul. My Words Healed My Soul. You can find the book on Amazon.com. I would tell you can find it on my website, but my website is being rebuilt right now, so you can't go to the website right now. And then the second book is The Depths of My Soul, Healed Through Love and Empowerment. And then my third book, which just came out in May, is The Constant Road to Healing. All of these books are not just talking solely about healing. It's talking about different things in life. And so some of those things involve healing. So one thing that I think I struggled with probably more than anything was forgiving myself. Sometimes when certain things happen, we have a really hard time forgiving ourselves, right? It's hard to forgive who you are and some things that you've allowed to happen and some mistakes that you've made and the person that you've been. That's hard. Looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? You effed up. You know what? That you could have made that work. You know what? You need to get it together. And I had to accept the fact, you know what? I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to be a better person than I was the day before. So I'm going to read this piece from my second book called The Depths of My Soul, Healed Through Love and Empowerment. And it's called I Forgive You. I've decided to forgive you, to release all the hurt and pain you caused, relinquishing myself from harboring bad feelings about the pain I've sustained, the constant fear of more pain from you. I realize your intent wasn't to create a lifetime of turmoil. Therefore, I must choose to forgive you. And although it was clearly inevitable that you would come to me asking for forgiveness, freedom, and even redemption, I know it was necessary to move beyond the past. How blessed I am that trouble doesn't always last. Knowing that my circumstances were the catalyst to the place I was in. So here I am, facing you and completely forgiving you. Standing in the mirror and committing to never inflict another day of misery or pain. Forgiving myself for the way I've treated me and even for how I allowed others to treat me. Because ultimately, forgiveness has to start right here with me. You see, I had become the one that was causing the tears in her eyes. This was all predicated on lies. And now I commit and make a vow to forgive you, to release any and all wrongdoings. As I face you today, I say goodbye to all the past fears, hurt, trouble, and self-inflicted pain. It is the final goodbye. I now forgive you. So that piece, again, is called I Forgive You. It was the piece I had to write to myself, for myself, forgiving myself for the things that the choices that I've made, the things that I've made other people go through and endure because of my toxicity. I've had toxicity before. I've had negativity and I've brought that to other people. And so I had to forgive myself. I had to let those things go. And so it's 8 o'clock. I want to wrap it up. And I want to say again, Darian, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for the path that we have been on for, I don't even know how many years, but it's been a long time. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being the ex-hubby where I can call and I can talk to, and you can do the same with me. And thank you for agreeing to do this with me. And I'm sure I'll call you and bug you again to be a part of my podcast going forward.
I think I'm sure
there's a great idea we can talk about.
Oh, most definitely. It was a great idea. I say it was a great idea, and I think it'll be a blessing to everybody. You know the bond that we share. I'll always be grateful for, everything that we've been through. I think we both learned a lot. We both grew a lot. And since 2008, we've been connected in a major way. So, I think that, and I hope that it blesses. Yeah, it is 10 years. That's a blessing, and it's still kicking, still doing well. So I'm definitely appreciative of that.
I got that bomb kidney. I got that bomb kidney.
You are a fool. But no, I mean, I think, with if people actually take it to heart and really, invest in themselves on the forgiveness piece, and it's not just, husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend. That's with any relationship, any loved one, whether it's a friend or a brother and a sister, or a sister to sister, brother to brother, whatever. Healing is important. And, life don't last always. So you need to tell people what it is while they still around to deal, because it's so
Yeah.
many people dropping like flies nowadays.
Life is not
So,
promised. And you keep getting in my head, Darian, because I was going to end the podcast by saying to everybody to please love the people in your life. Love the people in your life. I mean, really love on them. Let stuff go. Don't harbor all those hard negative feelings. Sometimes everybody is not going to be there with you, and you can't take everybody with you. I get that. But one of my favorite lines, and I think my friend Sharon commented earlier, is I release people lovingly if I have to. Now, sometimes you can form those relationships again and those bonds again, but I don't deal with negativity and toxic relationships anymore. But you can release people lovingly. You can do that. But love people and forgive people and heal, because it's not that serious. I want to ask people before I end and close out to keep me in your thoughts. Yesterday was a rough day for me. This is the week of the anniversary of my brother's death, and it's been 5 years. And I struggled yesterday. Yesterday was tough for me. And so I'm just asking you guys to send me some love and send me some hugs and send me some love, because that also is part of my continuous healing. And I know my brother is in a better place and he is resting, and he wouldn't want that for me to be sad or anything like that, but it is a struggle for me some days. So y'all send me some love, okay? And
I'm
again,
sending
Darian,
it
thank
from
you. Do you have any
960.
closing remarks?
No, I just pray everybody is able to, find the same, forgiveness. Because again, it's not about that other person. Forgiveness is about you. Release yourself
Absolutely.
from it. Release yourself from it.
Absolutely.
So, definitely
Yep.
everybody be blessed, be safe. And I'm sending love and hugs from 960. I know what it is. Rest in peace to Russ. And
Yeah.
I think everybody that came into contact misses him. So, I think just making sure that, he knows, and I know he knows how much you loved him, and you know, everybody else who came into contact with him, he's an unforgettable person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, sis. Okay, well, thanks, D. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate all of you all for tuning in. If you will do me a favor and please, please, please share this with your followers. If you want to support the book, I'm going to be dropping a link, both my Amazon link if you want to purchase the book. I also want to post the link for you to purchase directly from me. If you want to purchase directly from me, you'll get a signed autographed copy, and I'll mail it out to you and everything. So I'll put all the details in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for your love. Blessings.